this episode of Dil Se, we start with the fact that we lost a great leader of this country on the 12th of September, 2024. Sitaram Yechury passed away. Perhaps one of the tallest leaders of the left movement for many, many years. Whenever he interacted with him, I found him to be alive in every sense of the word. He knew what was happening on the ground. And what I admire about the left parties, let me tell you that now, is that they know that they are not going to come to power at the center. They're not going to wield that power at the center. But they are committed to the syncretic culture of India. They are committed to their ideology. They are Democrats in every sense of the word. And they believe that they are the voice of the marginalized, the voice of the poor, the voice of the farmers, the voice of those who have no voice. And they continue to fight. Sitaram symbolized that. So we're going to discuss today, right from the framing of our republic and the significance of the left. They have contributed over the years since independence. But we find that their representation in parliament has been somewhat static. Though they were the second largest party, the left put together after independence, after the Congress, just after 1952. But over the years, they have remained stagnant in the context of their representation in parliament. And then, of course, in UPA 1, they had the maximum number of seats, I think about 61. They were a force to be reckoned with. But now their representation again over the years, ever since 2014, has been reduced. They've become marginalized. Why is that? Is the left still relevant? Does the left have to reinvent itself? What should the left be doing? These are the questions that we will talk about in this episode of Dil Se. And we have three extraordinary people with us today who are masters in their own field. And we have Nilotpal, who is with me today, an old friend of mine, my colleague in Parliament during the 90s, from 1994 onwards to 2006, we were together in Parliament. He is a member of the Central Committee, he's the member of the politburo, he's the mind in a sense. He influences policies of the left. He articulates those policies exceptionally well. And in a sense, he represents the old guard of the left. So thank you very much, Nilotpal, for being with me today. We have Jairam Ramesh on my right. What can I say about Jairam? He was from the IIT Bombay, Carnegie Mellon. He has held portfolios in the ministry, Minister of State for Commerce. He was the Minister of State, then of course, independent charge of environment. He was influenced by Paul Samuelson. He was communicated with Gunnar Myrdal. He's worked as OSD. He's been in government, out of government. He's been in the Planning Commission. And of course, now he is the spokesperson of the Congress Party. He is, of course, in a sense, he knows the history of the Congress Party more than perhaps anybody else, and a prolific writer. We have, thank you very much, Jairam, for being here. We have Siddharth Varadarajan, who, of course, is a journalist, and he has, been editor of the Hindu. He has, got the Goenka Award. You were given the Goenka Award, and you did this thing, economics in London School.
Yeah.
London School of Economics. And he's got several awards to his credit. And at the moment, of course, he runs The Wire, which is I think that those who really believe in India, the kind of India that we want to live in, is represented through his channel, The Wire. So thank you very much for being here. Nilotpal, let me start with you.
Sure.
What is the future of the left?
I think you have buttonholed the left in a way with which I agree. See, we have to reinvent ourselves, but at the same time, those who write the obituary of the left based on the electoral performance, I think they are premature. And I would also say it's sort of politically premeditated, who see political processes as merely representation in the legislatures. Many times we are asked this question that how will you remain relevant? Fortunately for us, we exist in the parliament, but more so on the streets. And that is where we think that we can contribute. And in fact, we can carry the people. You put it very, very aptly when you say we are the voice of the voiceless. Now, unfortunately, in the background of the kind of changes that have been taking place globally,
Yes.
and more particularly in India since the beginning of 90s. Therefore, we have played a role in that, and as a result, as the say Kisan movement, it was the left which really tried to unite and largely united different peasant organizations. Similarly, in the trade unions, if you see at our work minutely, our emphasis is on creating a united framework. So when people were asking about our association in the evolution of the India bloc, what we pointed out that the India bloc cannot come about without a certain linkage with the people who are really in distress. Because it is these sections, because the impact of the changes that have taken place, whether in the field of economy, whether in the field of ideology, whether in the field of politics, it does not impact uniformly. People who suffer more are on the margins. Therefore, I think by being effectively raising those concerns, that we will remain relevant. And at a certain point of time, when initially it appeared that the extreme right wing will sway and lead all these poorer sections, because we need not remain in illusion that the poor and the marginalized do get swayed and do constitute a major part of the electoral support for the right wing. Therefore, it is there that particularly we can play a role, but this role has to be in the context of the overall fight for India as a concept and in defending the Indian Constitution.
No, but you're right. In fact, I personally feel that the left will be relevant no matter what happens, even if the representation is limited in assemblies and in parliament. Why? Because the left associates itself with the masses. And you've always been relevant. You were part of the peasant movement, even pre-independence. You were part of the anti-colonial struggle, pre-independence. You were part of the trade union movement, pre-independence. So I don't think that your relevance has vanished. But I think in this program, Siddharth, we don't ask questions. We just, want you to intervene at any point in time. Jairam knows that. So the point is, yes, you're right. But I think in the global community as it is today, capital plays a very important role in the life of a nation. And in the absence of a slight change in your perception of what economic policy should be, and the communists have changed all over the world, in that context, I think there is a change required. apart from the fact that you are directly associated with those movements. And I want you to throw some light on that, Ramesh.
Well, I've always believed that left may not always be right, but it's absolutely essential because it serves as a talisman for progressive values, and it also puts pressure on the non-left parties to adopt a more progressive agenda, which is, and the classic example of this is Kerala. Many years ago, Amartya Sen and Jean Drèze wrote this book on why is Kerala, why are progressive values related to education, health, land reform, why is there a bipartisan consensus in Kerala? And they ascribe this, and quite rightly so, to the influence of the left in the early 50s and the late 50s. And so other parties had to adopt their agenda in order to remain relevant. So I think that force of the left is very important. Of course, the left has to change. There's no doubt about it, because all over the world, left parties have changed. But I think the anchors are very clear. The anchor has to be secular values. The anchor has to be protection of the republic and the constitution. And also the anchor has to be those forces who do not derive the full benefits of this capital flows that you talk about.
That's right.
So I think the left should remain relevant, not whether the left is relevant. We need a strong left, not just in parliament, by the way.
Yes, yes.
Not just in parliament, not just in terms of running state governments. At one point of time, they were running 3 state governments, Kerala, West Bengal and Tripura. Now they're running only Kerala. So I think the idea of the left is very important. The idea of the left that was embodied, say, in the United Front government from 96 to 98. The idea of the left that got embedded in UPA 1, unfortunately not in UPA 2, yes. Because they withdrew the support.
Well, Sitaram said that one of the mistakes of the left was to actually withdraw support in the middle of the nuclear deal.
And of course, the idea of the left now that's embodied in the India group of parties. So I think for one, we fight the left where the left is strong. We fight them in Kerala, for example, but we are together in West Bengal. We've been together in Tripura. We are together in other states. Political competition will always be there. But I think what is more important, as Nilotpal says, the left as an element of protection of India's basic constitutional values goes beyond representation in assembly or parliament. And I think that's where the contribution of the left is.
Can I read?
Yeah, please.
I think that the left's attitude towards capital is not a binding constraint, quite frankly. I don't think it's, since the 50s, when first the CPI and later CPI and CPM in the 60s onwards, contested elections. And these have been parliamentary communist parties for 7 decades now. They don't go into elections with the slogan of promising socialism or promising communism, right? So I don't think their attitude towards capital or capitalism per se is a roadblock to their electoral appeal or other appeals. And that brings me to the point that the other two have also made, which is that we need to assess the strength of the left in 3 different senses. The parliamentary is perhaps the most visible. Mm-hmm. And in many ways, it's an important level because these are, after all, parliamentary communist parties. They're not kind of insurrectionary or revolutionary, in terms of street battles. The model that they have adopted is to, basically fight elections. So if you've embraced the parliamentary sort of approach and you are not doing well in the parliamentary elections, that's obviously an issue of concern, right? So that's at one level. I think the question that you began the program with as to why the left isn't doing also
so great in Parliament is worth asking. It's an important question. The second is the presence and involvement of the left in mass movements. And of course, they lead some of the country's biggest trade unions and Kisan unions. Their impact is visible in any number of ways. The farmers' movement in Punjab and UP and in Haryana that we saw may have been partyless in the sense that the farmers themselves were quite particular about the autonomous nature of their movement and that they didn't want politicians involved. But there's no question about the wider involvement of the left farmers' unions. After all, just a year earlier in Maharashtra, it's the left that had pioneered this concept of a long march to the city. They had taken lakhs of farmers to Bombay. They're involved in the trade union movement, although the trade union movement is also at a sort of, I wouldn't say decline, but it's an ebb today. The third level of importance of the left, and in many ways this is, as far as the Modi government is concerned, the most crucial, which is the relevance of the left at the level of ideas. And here you see, traditionally, the left has exerted a disproportionate influence over, political discourse, ideas, approaches to politics, approaches to pedagogy, questions of culture. The left, you mentioned pre-independence trade unions and peasant movements, they had IPTA. The left had an active cultural wing that debated and deliberated on what forms of culture India should have, questions of language and so on and so forth. And despite the decline over the last 3 decades, in the relative strength of the left at the parliamentary level, despite the ebb of, say, the trade union movement, the impact of the left at the level of ideas, at the level of the intelligentsia is still enormous. And that's why you see with the Modi government, I can't recall who was it who made the speech, Dattaram Hosabale or Mohan Bhagwat of the RSS, but they, in their sort of list of enemies, Islam, Christianity, of course, features very high, but the left is the third enemy for them, right?
No doubt about it.
And you wonder, look, left is not a parliamentary force anymore. They don't oppose. They're not a threat to Modi at that level, right? But it's the power of the idea that they really, really resent, and that's why, if you see, Modi from day one began targeting universities. He began targeting cultural sort of
JNU, what he did in
JNU, Hyderabad University, FTII.
That's right.
And students there have resisted. But, that's where the battleground is right now, where the left is, I would say, fighting one of the most crucial battles for its survival. I think in many ways more important than even what happens in Parliament. Because if the space of the intelligentsia is conceded, if Modi succeeds in sort of crippling the sort of Indian higher education and cultural activity and imposing this sort of sterile version of Indian culture that he has in mind, that's when you will begin to really feel the absence of the left. So I think that right now this is a fight the left is waging. Yeah, I think they need to look at improving parliamentary, and I have 1 or 2 ideas in that regard that we can come to as
Let me go back to the question I was asking. You're right that in the context of that capital is not so important because basically their contribution in the national movement is far greater at the ground level. But the fact is, in a global community, in a global world where the young person who is poor is watching TV channels and the kind of consumerism that's going on, it's not going to buy into the agenda of the left. This is what's happening. Everybody in a globalized world is looking at making money. Right? And that's ingrained in the minds of young people today. And any party which doesn't believe ideologically in making money, they get distanced from it. Is it a fact or is it not a fact? Number one. Number two, the other thing that has happened is that the trickle down, which is a positive thing, trickle down effect of capitalism hasn't taken place. And people are realizing the more freebies, the more benefits you give to industry is not going to impact lives at the bottom of the ladder, at the bottom of the pyramid. That's something on which the left can actually work on. Yeah. But these are two conflicting things that are happening.
I don't think the left has ever said that people should not live better. People should not aspire to better. The left, for example, when it says, like Congress Party also today is saying, right, that the problem with Indian the Indian economy today is that the Adanis and Ambanis are enriching themselves at the expense of everybody else, right? This is a left message and it resonates widely. I think even with the aspiration, even with that section of youth who look at that Ambani wedding and one part of them feels, yeah, I should also have a wedding like this. I'm sure most people were repulsed, but assuming that there are aspirational people who say, we want to do this, right? But they also recognize the impact that the Adanification, Ambanification of the economy is having on ordinary people.
What do you think, Jairam? Because when I look at my own fraternity, the legal fraternity, or when I talk across amongst the youth, they're really thinking in terms of how much money I can make tomorrow.
No, I think it's the three different aspects that Siddharth has put before us. I think it's very important. And I think we are fixated on the left as a force in parliament and assemblies. And that is working against the force of the left as a movement and the left as an instrument for ideas, which in the last 10 years has been under-resolved. So I would say, if as a well-wisher of the left, as a political opponent of the left, but as a well-wisher of the left, I would say that it should not be that we should look at, the left itself should not look at itself as, oh, we are not running state governments, we are not in parliament, we are not in Lok Sabha, we are not in Rajya Sabha. The yardstick for their success is how many movements have we championed. The yardsticks for their success should be, what are the educational institutions, cultural institutions, social institutions that we are able to influence.
Well, you know, of the three states, they have lost two.
But for me, that's irrelevant.
So therefore,
for me, that's irrelevant.
According
Actually,
to you, even if
frankly, if you ask
they were
me,
to lose Kerala, it's irrelevant.
For me, it's very relevant.
I'm not talking about you.
I mean,
I'm talking about
for the Congress party.
I don't think the left looks like that. Looks at it.
I won't write off the left if they lose Kerala, frankly.
No.
Because the left has a niche.
Yeah, no, I agree.
There is a niche for the left. There's a cultural niche. There is a niche in educational institutions. There is a niche amongst large groups, the Khet Mazdoors. You know, when we talk of farm issues, we talk of only farmers' issues, but we don't talk about tenant farmers. We don't talk about farm labor, and that's where the left plays a very important role. So I think, you know, we should.
But the parliamentary niche is also important.
No,
Sorry?
No. If
parliamentary
you
presence
ask
is
me,
important.
Siddharth, if you
Yeah,
ask
yeah,
me,
yeah.
even though their representation is small, they are the most articulated
Absolutely.
voices in parliament.
Yeah, I mean,
even though they are a few in number. Sitaram was one, he was one. So their importance in parliament is also something to be recognized.
I think there's an interesting discussion taking place. But before responding to this point, I would just respond to your earlier question about capitalism. You see, how can you wish of capitalism? And therefore, we are reconciled to the fact for quite some time we will have to deal with capitalism. But where we are concentrating now is the contemporary variation of capitalism that we are looking at globally as well as in India. You see, capitalism is beyond that features which was in its early years.
Yes.
Today's capitalism, I don't want to sound doctrinaire, I won't quote Lenin about the moribund nature, of ultimate moribund nature. But you see, today's global capitalism is in fact generating inequality. You see, serious contemporary critique of contemporary capitalism, it is sharply inequalizing the society, sharply enhancing unemployment, poverty, and so on and so forth. Therefore, I mean, to the extent that other parties will be prepared, we will also try to persuade that unless we really unite to resist and oppose that variation, it is dangerous. I mean, we are very thankful that many parties are understanding that, you see, cronyism is something which has not come autonomously.
Which the present government has embraced.
Yes, that is what I am saying, that it has also evolved in the form of contemporary capitalism that we see. And secondly, you see, that point that Siddharth was making is very, very right. You see, now who will take up the issues related to the social sector? Education, health, the kind of model. I believe you were part of the proceedings where even the Chief Justice had to say you cannot have contractual employees for securities in hospitals.
That's right.
I mean, it is that obscene version that we are seeing today. Therefore, social sector, education. And I will just go back to Modi's response when BJP won Tripura. So this journalist asked him that why you are rejoicing so much that Tripura just sends 2 MPs to the Lok Sabha. He said, you will not understand. It is something far deeper. It's ideological. And actually his insight was very, very clear that what the left means for the politics and the contributions it can make in uniting the forces that really are important for the idea of India and for the Republic.
See, there's one more aspect of the left that we normally don't talk about. We always talk about left at a very higher plane, or almost in an intellectual plane. But as far as people are concerned, it's not so much the left ideology, but it's the left way of life that has been, in my view, what has attracted the left to large sections of society. Today, I would say that, I mean, generalizations are always dangerous, but broadly speaking, I would say if there is one political formation in which you find still simplicity,
Yes.
in which you find great deal of integrity, and in which you find, a sense of collectivity, it's still the left.
Absolutely.
It's still the left.
Without it.
I mean, it's a paradox that more deliberations and more discussions take place in left forums. I mean, Jayaprakash Narayan once famously said that when revolution comes to India, our comrades will still be discussing a draft. So that's what I think appeals. There's an ideological appeal, but there's also a way of life. And I'm absolutely amazed when I see the way left leaders conduct themselves, their style of living.
They come in buses, they
just
live in
one
small
Absolutely,
this thing, and
I
they
can't see
contribute to the party. They, whatever they earn, apart.
I don't see that in many parties. I see that in the left.
Why many? They don't see that in any party.
And I can tell you, many of the left's opponents, they may argue against Nilotpal and Sitaram and all the other MPs in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, but they'll come and tell you, yaar, ye to kehna chahiye, ye log badi sadgi se rehte hain.
No doubt.
It's interesting that coming back to the RSS, Modi on the one side and the left on the other, 1925 is the year in which the RSS is founded.
Yes.
And the Communist Party of India is founded, right? And we are now coming to 100 years since. Clearly, the RSS has tasted a lot more political success, even though they kept aloof from and in many ways sabotaged the freedom struggle. When the CPI and all the progressive left forces were fully immersed in it. And the CPI played an instrumental role in the first decade and a half, 2 decades as a political opposition. And, it's only in the 80s, late 80s onwards that the political expression of the RSS begins to gain ground. Today, of course, it's clear that the RSS has gone way ahead. They're the ruling party, the ruling formation, and they're way ahead of the left. But still, they fear the idea of communism. They fear the fact that you have an organized political force that is motivated by the ideals of of communism. And that's why they will be relentless in the way in which they target any manifestation or expression, because for them, the left may be divided into myriad parties, and I'm going to come to that in a second, right? You have CPI, CPM, ML, different factions of ML, the Maoists.
Part of the
so on,
Congress
exactly.
Party also.
Yeah,
section of the
exactly,
Congress
right?
Party also.
The left may be divided into many factions,
Yes.
but as far as the sort of Modi-Shah approach to the left is, they're dealing with one united enemy. So they make no distinction that somebody is a Maoist, somebody. So you can have all kinds of bizarre statements coming from these people as to how they're going to tackle the left, right? But for them, clearly, the left is a danger. So the challenge really for the left is how do you, on the ground, become even more of a force. And here, I think that one of the questions, I mean, they are democratic in terms of their structure. You mentioned the simplicity. I think they have, they're perhaps the only party that still has a completely deliberative decision-making process, leadership process. The BJP, strangely enough, used to have that until
No longer.
the advent of Mr. Modi. No longer. Right?
That's right.
So it's the left pretty much that is the only force there. So they need to deepen that. But I think there are two aspects which are tricky and have been problematic for the left. One is, I think, the fact that the left is splintered into all these parties, multiple factions, which may have had a certain logic on the basis of ideopolitical differences in the 60s or 70s or even 80s. Today, it's very hard. You ask a young CPM cadre, SFI member, what's the difference in terms of ideology between you and AISF, you and CPI, or Liberation? They would be hard pressed to explain what exactly, why are you in different parties, right? And I've seen young sort of.
But will it make much of a difference?
It will undoubtedly, because I would say that if there is a united Communist Party, if there's one party, the strength of that one party, even if forget all the other factions, even if CPI, CPM, and Male were to come together, the strength of the three alone would be much greater than the sum of the parts.
What do you say, Nilotpal?
No, I will say one thing. One mistake I think we make, that duration of political formations in India. Now, it's not merely the question of that RSS was 1925 and we are also in early 20s. See, the point is they are status quoist. One of the biggest contributions of Sitaram, if you tell me, was in 1993 when he wrote that pamphlet, What is this Hindu Rashtra, which was dedicated to expose we or our nationhood defined by Golwalkar. And you see, people from the right attacked him, left, right and center. But because it was so well researched and so woven into the contemporary politics and ideological questions of the times, that he withstood. And the point is, you will see, especially in the 90s, this twin track, critiquing contemporary global capitalism and as it impacted India, and also the growth of the extreme right-wing forces. If you see globally, 2008 global financial crisis also pushed to the fore these extreme right-wing forces. If you just look at it, and you see the left initially found itself in great disarray, but slowly they're finding their ground. I mean, the way, for example, in French elections, the extreme right wing could be stopped, in which the left had a big role to play. So similarly, I mean, it is maybe not so distinct in electoral terms that RSS and these forces are essentially status quoist.
Oh, yes.
In their thought, in relation to freedom struggle also we are discussing.
But Kapil, I have to add a note of caution. We shouldn't romanticize the left. Okay? I'm a great supporter of the left, but let's not romanticize the left. They opposed Nehru till 1952. They called Nehru the running dog of British imperialism.
Okay. They were against imperialist
In
forces.
89, they aligned with the BJP to defeat the Congress. In 93, they went back on that position. That's great.
That's they believe at that time
That-
the
no, no.
Congress was status quo. That's why they
No,
did
no,
it.
no. See, the left also has been somewhat inconsistent. In the last 20 years, there's been a lot of consistency because the enemy or the adversary is very clear.
That's right.
Who is the adversary? So that has brought ideological clarity to all people. But the fact is
don't think
that the left's history is littered with these mistakes that they have made.
Well, I think
vis-a-vis the
history of,
I
history of
think
every
littered.
Every saint has every saint has a past.
I
the history of every
So let
Jairam
me,
Ramesh,
I can think of many examples like this.
the history of every political party is littered with these kind of things.
No, I agree.
हमसे history मत गिनवाओ.
And I applaud the left that they have acknowledged two mistakes. They have acknowledged one mistake that they said that by not allowing Jyoti Basu to be Prime Minister in 96 was a historical mistake, and withdrawing support from Dr. Manmohan Singh's government on the Indo-US nuclear agreement was a historical mistake. I mean, that much I applaud. I mean, that they can acknowledge their mistakes.
At the same time, I tell you that I don't want to really
We should
take
not.
this
Yeah, but this, this is a side
point of disagreement, especially in the present political context. I think it will help nobody. But you see, there are different ways of looking at history. And you will disagree with the way we look at it, and I will also disagree with the you look at it.
But there's a common agenda that we
But
need
at
to
the
now deal
same
with.
time,
I agree. I think history is history.
Yes.
and you see whether it is in 1996, whether it is in 2004, and of course now, we have very sincerely and honestly contributed to this process of this united fight against the extreme right-wing forces in defense of Indian Constitution. But I will tell you that left is also perhaps the most misunderstood and misinterpreted force because of the essentially anti-status quo point. You see, therefore, I mean, of course, it is for us to sort out the problems, as Kapil was saying, that how we'll overcome this general perception about us. But if you look at it on the ground, we have been trying to do this. I will just come to the very, very contemporary. Now, these Haryana elections are taking place. Now, we have come into understanding, and the Congress has left one seat for the CPIM. Yes. Only other party.
We did so in Rajasthan also.
Yeah, Rajasthan, of course, but Rajasthan, there we are a bigger force. But the point is that this is very important for really taking on the BJP and the manner in which they are functioning. Because the very, very sinister use of caste level divides and all that, this question of an inclusive approach to the contemporary political scene, it's very important. So, to that extent, I think there is a great scope, and we believe that people are also understanding this, that today the left is much more forward-looking, much more positive in contributing to this overall struggle for the defense
Let me come now to the contemporary situation today, that every institution which is part of our constitution is not just being a tract, but atrophied, and in fact destroyed. This is the time when the left forces and all other forces should actually come together. Because I believe, and this is my belief, I may be wrong, that the right-wing movement has reached its pinnacle, right? People are getting disillusioned with what is happening with the right-wing movement, not just in India, but the rest of the world. And therefore, they are going to be on the decline. This is the time when we should have a common agenda, right? with very much left a part of that agenda to actually how to fight these forces.
Kapil,
Because I think history.
I would just, one sentence.
Yes.
I think one of the major contributions of Sitaram was this, that he was very, very meticulous on really locating the vulnerability of the extreme right-wing forces, RSS, BJP, based on his very profound analysis of how they have grown. And that there lay the seeds of their, at least,
So I want to
setback.
ask you, I ask you, Siddharth, what do you think of this analysis, that this is the time when actually the right-wing forces are going to be on the decline?
I think whether that assessment is correct or not, whether they're on the decline, whether the decline is temporary or more permanent, how universal is it? The fact is that the right is the most serious danger and has to be opposed today. The threat of fascism is very real. I would say that you have open manifestations of this in Indian life, staring us in the face, whether it's the blatant targeting of Muslims by various state acts like demolition. Look at the speeches. I mean, there was an analysis of the election speeches of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister himself, in I think 100 out of 130 campaign speeches, directly targeting, abusing Muslims. In this kind of a situation, I think it's incumbent upon all political parties that believe in the Constitution, that believe in the values of the Indian freedom struggle, that believe in the ethos and culture and civilization of India going back 3,000, 4,000 years, to come together and stand unitedly against this force, against this threat, which, if it's not stopped in its tracks and reversed, will completely destroy this country.
This is the time to unite.
There's no dispute about that. The question is, what are the effective ways to do this? I think the India Alliance concept was a very good initiative at the parliamentary level. I still feel that if it had been implemented perhaps maybe a year earlier, and if the precise details had been worked on better, you would have had actually a very different election outcome, but that's water under the bridge. But I think equally important are the struggles against government policies through various mass movements and social movements, and in the realm of ideas. So I think this, the discussion that, for example, the Congress is now, and that was going to be my second criticism of the left, by the way, that apart from failing to unite themselves into one party, or at least reducing the sort of alphabet soup of CPIs that you have, I think there's been a sort of lag in the left's approach to, fully, in terms of the caste realities of India, and incorporating that in their organization, the leadership, addressing the caste issue more directly.
It's a problem. According to me, it's a problem.
Yeah, this is an issue which the left has not sort of fully squared up to.
I don't think they will square up to it. This is my feeling. What do you say?
I don't think so. I don't think, because you see, the whole question of our analysis, yours and mine and Jairam's, I believe, that the vulnerability of the extreme right-wing forces comes from this entire perception, which is not just political, but also ideological, also social. For example, what we believe, that BJP is a party which is different from all other political parties in the country, because they are effectively run by the RSS, and which is not wedded to the Indian Constitution. And that is why you see the main danger or threat of fascism. Equally important is their background with association with Italian fascism particularly. And therefore, I think we will grow because we have understood this. Maybe we have been delayed, as Jairam was pointing out. But on the Dalit question,
you should be delayed for too long more.
No.
But I want to.
Kapil, 1 minute.
No.
The question that you asked, in the current context, the challenges that we face, what is it that we can do collectively? I think we should and we are discussing the left.
Yes.
What can the left do? I think the comparative advantage of the left amongst all formations in India, the unique comparative advantage of the left is in movements, is in mass movements, is in agrarian movements, trade union movements, labor movements. I think that's where, my view, no political formation in India can match the left in this. Now, which means that the left will have to really redouble its efforts and rediscover what the left used to be in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. Let's face it, trade unions have atrophied.
Absolutely.
Let's also face it, that in spite of all our applause for the left and trade unions, the left also has focused exclusively, almost exclusively, on organized labor.
Yes, of course.
Which, is a very small proportion
There are
of the labor
structural
force.
changes in the
But
labor.
things are changing. But I think what we need to do, and what we means the India group has to do, is play on the strengths of each of the players in the India group. And the left brings to the India group this unique advantage when it comes to movement.
Just to come back to the question of caste, the left has, in many states, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, at various points in time, taken up and fought on issues against, taken up issues of caste discrimination. And it's been quite important to local movements, right? But at the national level, in the the left has allowed the Congress to run away today.
Yes.
With this, and this should have been the central plank of Indian politics for the past 70 years. How can a modern society allow the kind of caste inequalities which exist today? It just boggles the mind. And, people make fun of Rahul Gandhi saying, "Tumhara malik kaun hai?" And, in this very anecdotal way, pointing to the fact that you don't have a Dalit or an Adivasi among film directors or among newspaper editors and so on. But the fact is that look at the judiciary, look at any section of society, right? The glaring caste inequality, and that has somehow, the left has failed to make that a central issue at the national political level. And I think they need to do that. It's an important part of the process of dealing with the threat to the BJP.
I have two thoughts which I want to then this discussion then come to an end. First thought is that how is it that the BJP, in the electoral victories that it had, actually got representation across caste lines? Caste did not matter when the BJP came to power. Dalits voted for them, the backwards voted for them, right? Now, therefore, at a certain level, caste is not an issue, provided you are able to attract people to vote across caste lines. I don't think that the India bloc has such an agenda. That's the first thing. Number two, they are anti-status quoist, but I think all other political parties are pro-status quoist, right? And I think that we need, as political parties away from the left, to learn as to how to take on the status quoist within the party. I'm sorry, I'm saying this aloud. And that's really one of the big problems. These are the two thoughts I have. I just want you to
I
just
just
reflect.
want to make one small point. That is, you see, this in the entire process, what has taken place since the 90s. See, the process of so-called reforms has also not impacted everybody. It's both an economic and social inequality which has got really reinforced. Therefore, I agree that we understood, but we did not respond to it with the vigor that was expected.
No political party responded.
No, but again, there you may say that you are too much bragging about this, but potentially, as Jairam was putting it, that we are more sort of attuned to make this move, where we really did not play the role that we had the potential to play. But finally, one point I want to make, that you see, when I was making this distinction between BJP and other political parties, that BJP cannot be fought like other political parties. You see, it has to be immediate political, economic, social questions have to be combined with the ideological dimension. But for that, you cannot break, because everything said and done. You see, so many problems with BJP, so many points of vulnerability, but still they managed to get substantial support from sections of the people. And that cannot be broken.
That's right. That's right.
Because you see, it's not merely social status quoist or say communal. I mean, they are trying to redefine Indian nationhood.
That's true. That's true.
Our nationhood, which flows directly from the legacy of our freedom struggle, they want to overturn that by bringing the whole question of a religious, identity-driven nationalism.
Jairam, what do you think of these two issues that I raised?
Well, I don't think we should build grand sociological theories on the basis of one election. I can tell you, if you look at the 2009 election, where was the BJP?
No, but this is
No,
a different
the
dispensation.
same people who voted for the BJP in 2014.
No, 2014 was a different
in
dispation.
2009. No, that's
even
what I mean.
Vajpayee was wedded to a certain cultural,
Things
tradition.
have changed. Things have changed dramatically in the post-2014 period. 2014, in that way, was a watershed. So, what is happening in the last 10 years? And we have analyzed this, the challenge that we face, and I think the India group was a response to that challenge.
Yes.
I agree, it should have come much earlier. It should have been more cohesive. It should have had a structure. People like Sitaram worked very hard on it, but there were some issues. You can't come together at the last minute, frankly. And also, I think coming together is not just for contesting elections.
Yes.
You come together on an ideological platform.
That's not happening.
You come together for movements. You come together for fighting for the protection of educational and cultural institutions,
Right.
which has nothing to do with elections.
That's right.
Unfortunately, the mindset in political parties is let's come together.
During
How many seats will I get? How many
yeah,
seats will you give?
No, that's
it
the
becomes
And that becomes the point of discord.
That
then
becomes the
if it
point
doesn't-
of
if it doesn't work out.
Exactly.
I think
so you
really-
don't have a common agenda.
We
Actually.
have to have we have to come together to fight the battle for ideas
Yes.
and ideologies. We're not coming together for fighting elections is important, but that cannot be the sole favicol. That cannot be the sole trigger.
Exactly.
But
Unfortunately, that's what it is.
one issue that
That's
could
what it
serve as the favicol, so to speak, is the major threat that the BJP is posing to the federal structure of this country.
Absolutely.
Right, targeting states, and it just so happens that many of the India constituents, whether it's the left or the Congress or DMK, Samajwadi Party, they're strong in individual states. And I think they can recognize the fact that if the BJP RSS project continues in this fashion of whittling away at the constitution, at the idea of India, at the federal structure, this is going to be a serious attack on India as we as it came into being in 1947, and as representing the aspirations of peoples of different states and provinces. So I think that if the India Alliance can pick up on and you see some of this, right? I mean, the way in which many of the constituents have responded to the BJP's attacks on federalism. But I think that idea of uniting around issues has to be broadened.
May I suggest that there should be, and this is a thought which maybe the India bloc should consider, that there should be a group of representatives of the India bloc, which should be a core group, which should actually crystallize issues that impact the future of our country, and how do we need to deal with the right-wing forces, and then they should then, after having deliberated on issues, go around the country, right, and talk to the political parties, the leaders of political parties, and then formulate an agenda so that we have a common campaign.
And this is where somebody like Sitaram Yechury
Would have
probably
been, but
best.
I think that if that can be actually crystallized into something that we can do, I think it'll be a great thing.
I agree with you. Also, we need to take issues which resonate with people.
That's right.
Federalism is an issue that resonates
Education.
to a very
Education.
limited extent, I'm afraid.
Education.
But
Health.
you should take issues on health, for example. That will resonate.
Education.
What they're doing to schools, what they're doing to universities.
Employment.
Unemployment is an
Skills.
issue.
Skills.
Now, farmers' issue. Now, I agree with Siddharth that the farmers' agitation, in a way, the farmers' organizations said, we will not involve political parties. And that was their strength, actually. And that's how they really were able to force the withdrawal of the 3 black farm laws by the Prime Minister. So I think what we need to identify are issues on which you can really have mass mobilization. I mean,
Why
for
don't you,
example,
Jairam,
land acquisition is a big issue. People are losing land without getting adequate compensation. They're being dispossessed of land. So I think these issues, and that has nothing to do with how many seats we are going to contest in
forget elections, but not
Maharashtra, how many
elections.
seats we are going to contest in Jharkhand.
Why don't
shouldn't
the
reduce
Congress
it to
party take a lead in forming this ginger group?
No, it should, all parties have to come together collectively.
I think, Kapil,
And,
the point is there is no, two opinion about the relative strength of the Congress party within the India bloc. But at the same time, I think the idea of India bloc is that you have to create space for all others, that they should not feel really strangulated.
But space does not mean give more seats.
No. I am opposed to that.
We are not on elections. We're not on elections.
I am not saying that. I am saying that space in the sense of it need not be a seat. It may be the exchange of ideas.
That's right.
What I am saying, the overall question which is bothering the people today, maximum number of people, it is no longer a livelihood crisis. It is a
Existential
crisis of survival.
That's right.
So
Existential.
that how that whole idea of a survival crisis can be addressed.
Just look at the crowds. Every time there's a government recruitment program, whether it's Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, I mean, it's just heartbreaking to see lakhs of people turn up there.
Well, there it is. I think that we've had a wonderful discussion. And
I think the
some
left
of
should
ideas.
take the initiative because the left, in my view, has an influence disproportionate to its numbers.
Nilotpal,
Really,
the ball is in your court.
It has an extraordinary influence.
I agree.
And you see, if the left is not, the Congress is one of the poles of our politics. The initiative can't come from one of the poles. The initiative has to come from somebody who can mobilize all parties.
Done.
And I think it's the left that has to take this initiative because in many ways, everybody respects the left for the way they conduct themselves, for their progressive values, for their strength in mass mobilization and social movements. Sitaram was playing this role.
Yes, of course.
And before Sitaram was playing this role, Harkishan Singh Surjit would play this role. Jyoti Basu.
Yes.
I've seen Jyoti Basu, the role that he played
Correct.
in UPA 1 in 2004. So I think the left should also now have a much more active role in this. And the mindset should not be, what is the seat sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's far away. In any case, that's
that
far away.
destroys all.
That's far away. Let's get this movement going.
No, that much I can say in our self-defense. We have never been like that. I mean, we have posed issues. We have where left, even electorally, needs to be recognized. That we have pointed out, but we have never joined issues on that.
Yeah.
Well, with that thought,
I think friends of the left must come together.
Yes, absolutely.
Because there's a very large community of friends of the left.
There's no doubt.
You know, in educational institutions, in culture.
Especially within the student community.
Yeah, student community. So I think the support, the pressure should also come from this larger group called Friends of the Left.
Well, thank you very much for being here today. It's been, I think, a wonderful discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.